He's going to give us anything to chase but God. What are we chasing? He's going to give us all these things that sound so good, that sound so fulfilling. But just think back to the Garden of Eden. He made that fruit sound really good. He made the side effect of eating that fruit sound really good. He disguises himself as light. So, some people might call me crazy for saying this, but I believe that the enemy is disguising all of these worldly things as light to us, as something to make us happy, as something to fulfill us. Without chasing the things of this world, we will naturally be happy. We will naturally be fulfilled without any painful toil for it. So a few months ago, I posted a video talking about how consumerism had made us blind. In that video, I dive into just like consumerism in our world and our culture. I talk a lot about consumerism as a Christian in that video. I had a request to dive deeper into this topic and to talk about how minimalism and Christianity can be connected. This is something that I'm really passionate about talking about, and so I'm really excited for today's video. And I hope you walk away from today's video feeling inspired and maybe looking at minimalism through a different lens and seeing it from a different perspective. So we are going to start off in the very beginning, in the book of Genesis, in the beginning of creation, when God created us as human beings on earth. So if you want to dive into that, God created us to live in our simplest form. Basically, we were going to be living in nature. We were going to be eating plants for our food. We were going to be caring and taking care of animals. We were going to be worshiping and honoring God in the Garden of Eden. He put Adam and Eve in this beautiful piece of nature in the Garden of Eden. After sin, everything went downhill after that. And we all can agree on that after the fall of man and after sin, everything went downhill. I don't think there's anyone that would disagree with that. When I look at how God intended for us to live, it's extremely simple. There is not a lot of noise. There is not a lot of stuff. There is not consumerism. Well, first of all, there's no sin. And there's all these things that we have now that were not supposed to be how we were made to live in the beginning. Now, the argument will be, well, after the fall of man, the world progressed and now we live in this culture. And yes, that is the case. But to me, I look at how simple it was and how beautiful that was. And if there's anything that I can pull from the Garden of Eden, if there's anything that I can pull from how God intended for us to live, even with the fall of sin, even with the fall of man, I want to do that. And I want to try, and I want to strive to live the way God is calling us to live. So minimalism, I think a lot of times people think of minimalism as, the aesthetic of your home and how much or how little you own. And that's kind of like the core thought process behind minimalism. Is if you hear someone's a minimalist, if you hear the word minimalism, it seems sterile and like someone just has everything they own in their backpack. And although that is the case for some minimalists, if you dive into what minimalism teaches and what a minimalist life is, it can be very connected to the way I feel we are called to live as Christians. So first off, if we want to talk about the part of minimalism that most people think of, how much or how little you own, consumerism and materialism, then we can talk about, where our treasures are. If you go to Matthew 6:19, do not lay up for yourselves treasures on earth, where moth and rust consume and where thieves break in and steal. But lay up for yourselves treasures in heaven, where neither moth nor rust consumes and where thieves do not break in and steal. For where your treasure is, there will your heart be also. So, that is a very common Bible verse that most of us know, but have we really taken it to heart? And I think that, speaking from experience with my minimalist journey, my heart was not in in a good place. I was making, worldly and material things a very high priority in my life. And in Colossians 3:3, if then you have been raised with Christ, seek the things that are above, where Christ is, seated at the right hand of God. Set your minds on things that are above, not on things that are on earth. For you have died and your life is hidden with Christ in God. When Christ, who is our life, appears, then you will also appear with him in glory. And I think those two verses really tie into, minimalism and Christianity, and where we are putting our priority and putting material things on such a high pedestal. And there are verses after verses in the Bible talking about, where our treasure is. So Jesus teaches simple living in its simplest, truest form. When we think of Jesus and, how he speaks in his words, how, he calls us to live, it has nothing to do with how much money we make, the type of car we're driving, how big our house is, the type of clothing we have, how much money is in our bank account. We've got all these worldly things that we all get sucked into. Jesus does not teach those things to be important. He doesn't. You will not find that in his words, that we need to put those things on a high pedestal. And minimalism teaches simplicity and not taking things for granted, and being grateful for what we have, and not giving into labels and these societal standards that we need to follow regarding what we own and what we buy and what we look like. All of these things go so against what Jesus teaches and what, how he calls us to live. So when it comes down to it, we want to ask ourselves, how did Jesus live, and how are we called to live? Okay. So we are called to follow in his footsteps. I did a video my last video was about comparison, and I love our priest a few weekends ago was talking about comparison. Actually, he was talking about the only thing to compare ourselves to, and that we should be comparing ourselves to, is who we were yesterday, so that we can be a better person today, and we should be comparing ourselves to Jesus. That's the only thing we should be comparing ourselves to. So if we want to dive into how Jesus lived very, very simply. He grew up in a very, very modest and humble home. He was not wealthy. Jesus was not wealthy. He was not born into a wealthy family. He was born into a very low income family. Mary and Joseph did not have much money. They came from the city of Nazareth, and they did not have much. And I think that's so humbling to think about, and really makes you think that, man, the Son of God was born into a very low income, not wealthy, they didn't have much type of family. He wasn't a rich, wealthy king that had gold and money and expensive, fancy things and laid his treasures up with those things. And I think God was trying to tell us something in that. I think he was trying to show us how we are called to live. And this is not saying that you can't make a lot of money. This is not saying that you can't have nice things. Again, what I love to talk about is your heart. What are you filling yourself with? Where are these voids? And are we filling these voids with things? Are we filling these voids with material things instead of our relationship with God, with our relationship with our Savior? And I don't know, just thinking about how he lived really just shows me that a simple, intentional life with my priorities where they should be, not on material things, not on the chase of money, on the chase of things, on the chase of happiness, and putting it into how he lived and how he was born, really sums it up for me. So I've talked about The Chosen on here. I love, love, love that show. I highly encourage you, with everything I have, to watch it. It is the only show that I watch now. I do love Little House on the Prairie, so that's my other show. But The Chosen is just it is life-changing because we are so visual as humans. And so seeing these Bible stories and seeing the actor who plays Jesus play out these, things that we hear in the Bible and stories that we know of Jesus played out in front of us and on the screen is just, it's amazing. It is so amazing. And so I'm going to talk about a few parts in there that really just visually gave me the idea of how Jesus lived and how we are called to live. So there is a scene in there where it talks about Jesus loving the little children. Let the children come to me, right? And in there, the children are asking him, where's your house? Are you not wealthy? Do you not have a house? Because in the scene, Jesus is camping. He doesn't have like an actual building for a house. He's on his way to share his message. And so the little kids are asking him, are you poor? Like, where's your house? Why don't you have a house? And question after question these kids are throwing at him, and he just replies, my Father provides everything that I need. My husband and I looked at each other when that scene, and we went, wow. How often do we forget that? How often do we make these things such a priority in this chase for accumulating possessions, accumulating the new house, accumulating the new car, accumulating the labels and the clothing and all these things? How often do we make it such a priority that we forget that God provides everything we need? And hearing Jesus, the Son of God, say this, and of course this is just an actor, but just hearing that and seeing Jesus, it was beautiful. And so I wanted to share that with you. And then in another scene, he's getting ready to do his sermon on the hill, his sermon on the mount. And basically it's the Beatitudes in this scene. And Mary, his mom, is getting him, like all the apostles and Mary are getting him ready for this sermon that he's going to give. And Mary comes up and says, do you want this color robe? Do you want red or blue or purple? And Jesus is like, I don't care how I look. I don't care what I look like. And Mary was just trying to present him in a way to this crowd, to help him look nice. But Jesus didn't care. And as much as this is just an actor, I'm fully aware of this. I really do believe that that's probably how Jesus would have reacted to a question like that. Trying to dress him up for this speech. I highly doubt that he would have given so much importance to the red gown or the purple robe or whatever it was. That's not where our priorities are supposed to lie. And so anyway, seeing these visual scenes really just brought it to life for me and made me realize, wow, like this goes into how we are called to live. And so this, goes into the vanity aspect. And, are we making our looks such a priority? Are we getting caught up in how we look? Are we getting caught up in how we are clothed, how we're clothing our bodies? Are we getting caught up in the brand that we're wearing? Is our clothing somehow fulfilling us? Is our clothing making us feel fulfilled when we should be being fulfilled in Jesus and Christ? So I know a lot of people will say, well, Katie, that doesn't have anything to do with minimalism. Well, to me it does. It has to do with where are your priorities. And minimalism has to do with getting your priorities back in line and getting it off of the chase and the materialistic, consumeristic, mindset and the chase for more. And so if you want to dive deeper into it, it goes into vanity and it goes into what we're making a priority. So if we want to go into the money aspect of putting money on such a high level, chasing after money for happiness. 1 Timothy 6 says, "For the love of money is the root of all evils. It is through this craving that some have wandered away from the faith and pierced their hearts with many pangs." Actually, I'm going to go up a little bit to 1 Timothy 6:6. It says, so it starts with, There is great gain in godliness with contentment, for we brought nothing into the world, and we cannot take anything out of the world. But if we have food and clothing, with these we shall be content. It doesn't say what type of clothing. It doesn't say what brand of clothing. It doesn't say how much clothing. It doesn't say the kind of house and the kind of car and all these labels that we are told. But if we have food and clothing, with these we shall be content. But those who desire to be rich fall into temptation, into a snare, into many senseless and hurtful desires that plunge men into the ruin and destruction. And then it goes into what I already said. For the love of money is the root of all evils. It is through this craving that some have wandered away from the faith and pierced their hearts with many pangs. And so this just clearly states that the love of money is the root of all evil. That if we're chasing this money, if we're chasing these things, we will never be happy. It is an endless chase. And it is just a hole that will go down. You just keep going down, 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 thinking that there's gold at the end of the tunnel and that we will somehow reach this level of happiness. If we make 50,000, 100,000 into, 6 figures, whatever it is, and that's happiness. And it is not. It is a lie that we are told. And this shows that. So minimalism, goes into material things, but it also goes into what are we chasing for happiness? What are we trying to fill? What void are we filling? Are we filling this void, this empty space within us with stuff, with chasing money, with material, physical things, worldly things? And that goes against Christianity. That goes against where Jesus calls us to be. When it comes to chasing money, I want to bring you to Matthew 6:24. No one can serve two masters, for either he will hate the one and love the other, or he will be devoted to the one and despise the other. You cannot serve God and mammon. So this goes into serving money. This goes into serving anything that, material things that are going to bring us quote unquote happiness. We can't serve two masters. We will either be serving this worldly part of us or we will be serving God. We can't serve both. And minimalism taught me that, what are you serving, right? Where are you putting your happiness? Proverbs 10:22 says, the blessing of the Lord brings wealth without painful toil for it. So with God as our center, with God as our priority, without chasing the things of this world, we will naturally be happy. We will naturally be fulfilled without any painful toil for it. And the blessing of the Lord brings wealth. And it's not wealth in the eyes of the world. It's a different type of wealth. It's the love of God. It is a feeling of peace with Him in our lives. It is that anchor that holds us through every storm. That is the wealth that Jesus gives us. That's the wealth that God gives us. So as much as it might not be the wealth that the world teaches, it is so much more wealthy than any amount that you might have in your bank account. And minimalism taught me that money is not going to fulfill you the way you think it will. And you need to make money to live in this world. I am 1,000% aware of that. And I am not coming from a place of making a lot of money. I'm not coming on here saying I have all this money and it's easy for me to say, you don't need it because I'm living this wealthy life. That is far from the truth. But I'm coming on here from a place of I have shifted my mind to what matters. And I've shifted my mindset of money to try to bring my mind back to where God needs my mind to be. Another side of minimalism is living a more quiet life. And we are not created to be this connected to this much noise. I heard somewhere that the enemy's motto is anything but God. And that spoke to me. He's going to give us anything to chase but God. What are we chasing? He's going to give us all these things that sound so good, that sound so fulfilling. But just think back to the Garden of Eden. He made that fruit sound really good. He made the side effect of eating that fruit sound really good. He disguises himself as light. So Some people might call me crazy for saying this, but I believe that the enemy is disguising all of these worldly things as light to us, as something to make us happy, as something to fulfill us, when it is not. God is the only thing that will fulfill us in the long run. And he's definitely guiding us to chase these things that we think are going to fulfill us. And that goes into minimalism, you know? So the last part that I want to talk about is the deeper side of minimalism. And that is letting go, and the true idea of letting go. And so we can talk about letting go of material things and decluttering and, you know, getting rid of these things, this clutter in our lives. But I'm going to dive into forgiveness and letting go of grudges, letting go of toxic memories, letting go of things that maybe we are holding on to and we're not forgiving people for. This is the deeper side of minimalism to me. And this so greatly is connected to Christianity and how we are called to live and how we are called to forgive. Romans 2:19 says, "Do not take revenge, my dear friends, but leave room for God's wrath. For it is written, 'It is mine to avenge, I will repay,' says the Lord. On the contrary, if your enemy is hungry, feed him. If he is thirsty, give him something to drink." So Mark 11:25. "And whenever you stand praying, forgive if you have anything against anyone, so that your Father also who is in heaven may forgive you your trespasses." And this is just a couple of verses regarding forgiveness that you can find in the Bible. But, you know, we all know that Jesus preaches forgiveness and moving on from things. If we want our Heavenly Father to forgive us when we stand before him, we must be ready to forgive others. We must be ready to let go of grudges, to forgive and move on. And this is such a deeper side of minimalism that I know is so hard to accept sometimes, especially when things have been done to us in the past that are beyond understanding. Maybe it's things that you just can't imagine yourself forgiving. But with prayer, you know, anything is possible, and you can move on from things. And I highly encourage you to really meditate on this topic, because I really believe that this is so connected to simplifying your life. It's simplifying that mental clutter in your mind, the stuff that we're holding on to, these toxic things that we're not letting go of. That is just as important as letting go of the physical things. And again, it's all connected to minimalism. And in turn, to me, it's connected to Jesus and how we are called to live. So I hope that you enjoyed today's video. I could dive into a lot more verses, and I could dive into a lot more, you know, truth in the Bible regarding how, you know, what minimalism teaches and how we are called to live. But I just gave those few that really stuck out to me. And if you want to dive in further, do some research. I think I've seen a few videos about Christianity and minimalism. I think it's coming up a little more as people are starting to talk about it more. And I'm really excited to see people talk about this. I think that minimalism is so much deeper than if your house is gray and white, or if you have color, or if you have 5 shirts or 1 shirt or 200 shirts. It's deeper than all of that. And to me, it is so greatly tied to how we are called to live. And I'm really grateful for having this mindset on it. And I hope that it inspires you to kind of dig deeper into maybe your minimalism journey, and more than anything, dig deeper into your relationship with Jesus and how you are called to live. Thank you for being here and for joining me today. And I will see you in my next video. I hope you guys have a beautiful week. Until next time, take care.